So recently, due to a handful of instigating instances, there have been cries of, where's the civility in this debate as to how to treat people of opposing or at least differing political ideologies? Because, let's face it, the world is not as black and white as we tend to like to pretend. Now, I have pretty much zero political pull in this country and have no real authority to tell people what to do, but for my money, I really liked what the people behind Hamilton did when Mike Pence was in the audience. They basically came out and said, thank you for enjoying the show, but this was created by a diverse group of people of multiple ethnicities, gender identities, and sexualities, or something to that extent. Please keep that in mind going forward. It was pretty polite, it was pretty innocuous, and Mike Pence even said he wasn't offended. Unfortunately, and you probably know where this is going already, this is not how right-wing media, for example, picked it up. They picked it up as Mike Pence being under attack, Christian values being under attack, these hostile gay people and black people, and I don't know who else they blamed, probably Mexicans, just because they always blame Mexicans. You know, these horrible people came after us for our beliefs, our sincerely held religious beliefs. I thought this was America. But yeah, let's break that down for a second. A group of Americans in an American production in a space that was rented out to them for that production decided to use that platform that they had to make a statement to an American public figure in the venue for a show about an American public historical figure. And they did so in a fairly innocuous and harmless way, and suddenly we're under attack. So shifting gears a little bit, this is semi-insider baseball for a channel that only has like 180 subscribers, so it's probably rather pointless to talk about, but I have a habit of not mentioning the dreaded F word, and actually several other words, unless there's a specific context. If I'm talking, for example, about people who are self-described feminists, the feminism label is probably going to come up. But as a general rule, I've tended to avoid the use of the words feminist or feminism, along with other words for similar reasons, mostly for the reason that the minute that you mention words like this, people will start to hold you to every bit of baggage that they personally tie to it. For example, I don't think I've ever affirmatively argued the wage gap, but the minute somebody tries to pin me down, they'll be like, well, what about the wage gap you're always on about? I don't think I've ever actually mentioned the wage gap outside of situations like this, or when people have directly approached me talking about it. But there's an interesting effect that goes along with this, because I don't have to mention feminism to have it held against me. In fact, I don't even have to mention anything involving women, because feminism has sort of become this boogeyman that is sort of the enemy of everything that, air quotes, I stand for. And as such, it almost doesn't matter, because it still ends up being a triggering, instigating factor when it comes to people's responses. One of the reasons that I'm doing this video, actually, is because I had somebody get really mad at me and say that I shouldn't be calling him a racist when I didn't mention racism. And I want to go a step further. I didn't talk about black people versus white people. I didn't mention skin color or ethnicity. I didn't mention privilege, which is another word I tend to avoid on this channel. I didn't talk about differing outcomes. I didn't talk about biases. It's just he heard racist because I was talking about Trump issues. I mean, there's an argument as to whether or not I was engaging in civil discourse. I would like to think that I was at least engaging in good faith discourse. But the reality is that for everything I said, I might as well have been screaming at him that he was a literal Nazi and he should go kill himself, because that's basically what he heard, that I was calling him a racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, cishet male, and that he should burn in hell for whatever reason. And it seems like these are the sort of assumptions, if not the exact assumptions, which are front-loaded into pretty much every argument that this guy has, because he seems to come pre-defensive and pre-hostile. And I've seen this a lot with conservatives that I've argued with, and it's not just limited to conservatives, but I'm going to continue with the example, so... And to be honest, I sort of understand where they're coming from, because I've seen conservative media before, and it tends to sort of amplify and intensify individual events to the point that it looks like it's an epidemic. And then you have a bunch of talking heads who look virtually identical who tell you that everybody is basically out to get you. Everyone thinks you're a racist. Everyone thinks you're a homophobe. Everyone thinks that you're a sexist, etc. But to use an example that only came to mind as I was recording this video, there is something that is often thrown in trans people's faces, the statement, "die cis scum," which you've probably heard thousands upon thousands of times if you're on the internet. Well, maybe not thousands, but you'd probably have heard it quite a few times if you exist in any sort of internet space at all. And the interesting thing is it's almost never by trans people, and usually when it is trans people, it's a reference to something or rebuking the idea. Because as far as I can tell, when you track it back, one trans person said it years ago, and it got amplified by this echo chamber where a bunch of people suddenly felt attacked. And this is one of the things that sucks about being part of a minority, because when you lose your cool, you represent the entire minority group. I don't know the circumstances behind the original statement. I don't know if it was born out of frustration or if it was actually born out of some actual hatred. But it doesn't really matter, because that one statement uttered once is now a weapon used against trans people, against all trans people, everywhere, because one person said it and then it was repeated millions of times by people who felt like they were personally under attack. And now it is an epidemic. Trans people everywhere are out to get you, etc., etc. Much like the feminism and wage gap thing, if you are trans, then you automatically believe that all cishet people are scum and must die, and that there are 57 genders exactly, and that people should go to jail for accidentally using the wrong pronoun on somebody. And it doesn't even really matter that you probably and almost certainly don't hold any of those beliefs, because they're basically straw man arguments, but they're what people believe, they're what people hear, they're what people think, and so they're what people will hold against you, and what people repeatedly have held against me. And while it's frustrating in and of itself, it's even more frustrating in the context of this demand for civil discourse with people who won't listen to you, with people who won't hear you, with people who will hear things that you don't say and hold beliefs that you don't have against you, who will front load these assumptions into a conversation and become hostile towards you. It's frustrating, but mostly it's just baffling, because I don't know the answer to this. I do not know how to reach somebody who's already going to go in with assumptions and then refuse to listen to and or change them. And if you think that I am applying this only to the other side, well, my next video is going to tackle at least one issue in which I definitely do not think it's the other side only. Thanks for listening. Amaranth out.